Hi, I'm Dr. Fern White. Now this is a really important one for children and about breathing properly through the nose for children. A whole bunch of things starts to come into play with children, and it starts from when they're first born and why it's important, if you can, okay, not all women can, but if you can, to start breastfeeding. Because when a baby starts to suckle on a mother, what happens is that growth and development, all the muscles are being trained to pull and develop in the correct way. But number two, what happens when a baby starts to suckle on a nipple is that the baby then starts to breathe through the nose, and that kickstart nasal breathing. Now, nasal breathing is so important, particularly for growing children. And there's a whole list of reasons why, and I'll just go through really briefly with you. It's not only beneficial, so the nose is used to filter particles, bacteria in the air. If you breathe through the nose, or if children breathe through the nose, they're less likely to become sick and catch infections because of all these incredible things called cilia, which filter the air and the bugs. They're also less prone to getting things like middle ear infections, and particularly for kids, oxygen is so important to their vitality and development. And I said in my previous video how important it is when we breathe through the nose, we train our body to actually unlock the oxygen molecule efficiently. And oxygen is used, it is the gold for our cells, every single cell in our body, billions of them, to use the oxygen to produce energy so we can do all the things that we need to do. And that's how we live. Breathing through the nose allows us to take in more oxygen. Even though it feels like we're breathing less, it increases our body's efficiency to take up that oxygen. And for children, breathing in the nose, this is so important through the nose, because what happens is that, particularly at night time, if kids have their mouth open and they're breathing, so think about what happens when you have a cold and you can't breathe through the nose. What happens and how do you feel the next morning when you wake up? Well, particularly for kids, when they are breathing through their mouth all day, and all night, what happens is that they don't have the energy and they get overtired because they're not breathing properly, and perhaps even waking up numerous times throughout the night because their body's not getting enough oxygen. And that, a little bit scary, it's called sleep apnea in children. And we need to get that checked out, okay? But what happens is then kids, when they get tired, unlike adults, they don't get lethargic and tired. They actually get hyperactive, and unfortunately in some cases are diagnosed with things like such as ADHD and put on medications that actually make the whole thing worse. So going back, so important for kids to learn to breathe through their nose so they can have the right amount of oxygen intake for their vitality, energy levels, and just normal growth and development. Number two, for kids from a tooth perspective, when they open their mouth and they breathe through their mouth, the tongue sits down on the mouth. Now the tongue is so important. Every time we swallow, it should be on our palate, but really it should be resting on our palate, particularly for kids, because the tongue acts as an archway to allow the teeth to develop around there properly. So kids then don't get crowding if they are able to breathe and function properly by nose breathing, keeping their mouth closed. When they swallow, the tongue goes up on the palate. Every time the tongue goes up on the palate, it exerts 500 grams of forces. That's half a kilo of force to keep that palate open. The palate sits underneath this area here, and it also allows the nose or the nasal passages to open. Of course, then much better for breathing and taking in oxygen, okay? But what happens with children is that the more they are able to breathe through the nose and keep their mouths shut, the more then the upper jaw develops, because they're developing and growing all the time around the tongue, and less crowding occurs. So you don't have all these problems, or not as many problems later on the track, with things like braces and taking out teeth and headgear and skeleton problems, because kids you see who breathe through their nose have less crowding. A lot of their research goes to show that. But kids who breathe through the mouth, you tend to see their head come forwards, jut forwards, everything opens, a little bit of a almost dopey look on them as well, and the tongue falls down. And they're walking around like that all the time, breathing through their mouth. And of course, susceptible to all the bugs in the air and the cold in the air, a whole bunch of things. So one really cheap, simple thing that we can do for our children to ensure that they live long with lots of energy and vitality and have proper growth and development and speech is we just teach them how to breathe through their nose. I hope this has helped. I'll see you soon.